Okay, I want you to imagine something. Picture a street. It's late at night,
Mm-hmm.
and the cobblestones are wet, slick. They're reflecting this weak kind of yellow glow from old gas lamps.
Right.
And there's this thick fog rolling in, maybe from a harbor nearby. It's so thick you can't see the end of the alleyways. It makes the world feel really, really small, almost suffocated.
Closed, like a trap.
Exactly. And the shadows are just so long and sharp, they almost look like prison bars stretched out across the pavement.
It's a mood. You can feel that just from the description. It's heavy. It's damp.
It is heavy, but it's also beautiful, isn't it, in a strange way? Now, if you're a film fan, you might be thinking I'm describing a classic Hollywood noir. Humphrey Bogart, the Maltese Falcon, that whole vibe.
That's where my head went immediately.
Right. But I'm not. That whole image, that whole world, it's not an American invention. It is the absolute heartbeat of a very specific, very intense moment in film history called French Poetic Realism.
And today we're talking about the man who arguably built that world, the director, Marcel Carné.
You said built. I think that's a perfect word for it.
Oh, it's crucial.
Yeah.
Because Carné wasn't just, filming stories. He was constructing these complete emotional universes. And the sources we're digging into today, especially the frames and shadows discussion with Dominic Herrera and Priya Sanjay, they use this one specific term to describe the emotional register.
What's that?
Disenchanted.
Disenchanted. Wow, that's a powerful word. It's not just sad.
No. It implies that there was magic at some point, there was enchantment, and now it's gone.
So it's the aftermath. It's what's left behind when belief dies.
Exactly. The fairy tale is over before the movie even begins. And what's left is visually stunning, just gorgeous to look at. But it's fundamentally sad. It's a world where the characters, they know they're trapped, but they try to live with a certain dignity anyway. It's all about finding the beauty in resignation.
Yeah. Okay, so here's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to try and understand how this visual style, the fog, the shadows, all of it, wasn't just, a cool aesthetic choice.
Right.
It was actually encoding the anxiety of an entire nation that was standing on the brink of World War II. We're also going to explore this incredible partnership between a craftsman-director and a poet-writer.
Two halves of the whole.
And finally, we're going to try and answer a question that comes up in the source material that, frankly, sounds kind of impossible.
I think I know which one you mean.
Can a movie be so sad, so melancholy, that it actually weakens a country's military morale?
That accusation, it's one of those fascinating moments in all of film history.
Yeah.
The idea that a vibe could lose a war, it's just wild.
It is wild, and we will get there. But first, let's start with the architects. Let's start with Marcel Carné.
Okay.
Usually when we talk about great French directors, especially from later periods like the New Wave, we think of intellectuals, right? Godard, Truffaut, philosophers with a camera, people writing essays in cafes. Was that Carné?
Not even close. And that's really the first key paradox you have to get your head around. He was not a grand theorist. He wasn't writing manifestos.
So he wasn't part of the avant-garde like a Jean Vigo who was just trying to break all the rules?
No. Carné was a working-class kid. He was from the 18th arrondissement of Paris. His father was a cabinet maker.
Cabinet maker. Okay, that feels significant.
Oh, it's vital. Because Carné approached filmmaking with the rigor of a craftsman, not some flighty artist in an ivory tower.
He knew how to build the box.
He knew how to build a box. He learned the trade the old-fashioned way. He started as a camera assistant. Then he was an assistant director to huge names like René Clair and Jacques Prévert. He knew lenses, lighting, set construction. He treated the frame like a piece of furniture that had to be perfectly built.
If the joinery isn't perfect, the whole thing just collapses.
That's the mindset. He provides this structure, this visual gravity.
Okay, so he builds the house, he provides the container, but the soul of these movies, that beautiful fatalistic dialogue that had to come from somewhere else. You can have a perfectly built cabinet, but it's still empty.
Right, and that's where the partnership comes in. You cannot understand this movement, you can't understand Carné without the other half of the equation, Jacques Prévert.
The poet.
The poet.
Yeah.
And the screenwriter, the lyricist.
Yeah.
The source material describes their collaboration as this kind of perfect division of labor.
Okay.
Carné brought the visual weight, the realism, and Prévert brought the language, the words, the poetry.
There's a phrase in our notes that just perfectly sums up Prévert's whole philosophy. Fatalism shot through with tenderness.
Isn't that beautiful? It's everything. His core belief, and you see it in every one of their films, was that beautiful, doomed things are the most honest things in the world.
Wow. That's like a bumper sticker for the entire movement.
He really is.
beautiful, doomed things are the most honest things. Okay, so let's try to define poetic realism a bit more technically, because it just sounds like a contradiction in terms, you know? Poetry is lofty, it's abstract. Realism is gritty, it's on the ground. How do you smash those two together?
Well, it's a fusion of two very different traditions. Visually, Carné is borrowing a ton from German Expressionism.
Okay, so like Metropolis or Nosferatu.
Exactly. That high contrast lighting, what we call chiaroscuro, those deep inky blacks and bright whites. And the sets are stylized. They don't look exactly like reality. They look like a psychological state.
So that's the poetic part of the visuals. The lighting is super dramatic, almost theatrical. So where does the realism come in?
The setting and the characters. Instead of, vampires or robots or wealthy socialites, Poetic Realism takes that high art expressionist lighting and it shines it on dock workers, on military deserters, on drifters, people living on the absolute margins of French society.
So you get a guy in like greasy overalls working a dead-end job, but he's lit like he's in a cathedral or a nightmare.
That's it exactly.
Yeah.
It elevates the suffering of the working class to something almost mythic. And the themes, they match that. It's almost always about love arriving too late.
Or a desire that just can't be fulfilled.
Right. And the source material makes this really crucial point that fate in these movies is not mythological. It's not Zeus throwing a lightning bolt at you. It is structural fate.
Structural fate. Okay, what does that mean? You're doomed by your address.
Pretty much. You're doomed by your class. You're doomed by society. The world itself is rigged against you, and there is no escape. There's no working your way out of the fog.
Which, I mean, that brings us right to the historical context, doesn't it? Because these films didn't just appear in a vacuum. The style exploded between, 1934 and 1939?
The interwar period. And the context is just so incredibly heavy. In France, you have the Popular Front government trying to enact labor reforms, but they're struggling. You've got the Spanish Civil War raging right next door, which is like a dress rehearsal for the bigger war to come.
And, of course, the rise of Hitler and Mussolini. There's this gathering dread, as the sources call it.
And that's what the movie's tapped into. There's this amazing quote from the great critic André Bazin. He said that these films encoded the psychological condition of a society.
A society that knew, on some level, that catastrophe was coming.
They could feel it. The fog in these movies wasn't just weather, it was history. It was the inability to see a clear future. The society felt trapped, so the characters on screen were trapped. It's art, metabolizing the anxiety of the real world.
Well, let's make this concrete then. Let's look at the movie that really put all of this on the map. Port of Shadows, or Quai de Brume from 1938. If you want to see the face of poetic realism, who are you looking at?
You are looking at one man, Jean Gabin.
The guy in the trench coat.
The guy in the trench coat. Jean Gabin is absolutely essential. He was not a pretty boy actor. He wasn't a swashbuckler. He had this heavy, lived-in face. And the source describes his acting style in this really compelling way. They say he carried exhaustion as dignity.
Oh, I love that. Exhaustion as dignity. That's incredible.
Isn't it? He looked like a man who had seen everything, and he found it all worthy of compassion, but not of surprise. Nothing could surprise him anymore.
And in Port of Shadows, he plays a military deserter, right? He shows up in this port town, Le Havre.
He's on the run. He's trying to get on a boat to Venezuela, anywhere but here.
And sticking with the tropes we talked about, he meets a girl.
Of course. He meets Nellie, played by Michelle Morgan, who was only 17 at the time, and they fall in love instantly. But it's that very specific, poetic, realist kind of love.
Which is?
It's love combined with an intuition of disaster. They look at each other and they both know, this is beautiful. This is going to end badly.
And all he can talk about is this dream of Venezuela.
That's the poetry, right? The dream of some other place. But the realism is the fact that the film absolutely refuses to honor that dream. The sets, designed by Alexandre Tronner, who we need to put a pin in, he's very important later. He built the streets of Le Havre in a studio, but he tweaked the perspective just slightly to make them feel more claustrophobic, more inescapable. It's a visual trap.
Yeah.
And, spoiler alert, not really, because the genre demands it.
He never makes it to Venezuela.
He never makes it to Venezuela.
Okay, so this is where it gets really, really interesting for me. The political backlash that we mentioned at the start. So the movie comes out in 1938. France falls to the Nazis in 1940.
Right.
And somehow people pointed the finger at this movie for the loss. That sounds insane.
It does sound insane to us now. But yes, after the defeat, the Vichy government, the collaborationist regime, They needed scapegoats.
Of course.
They couldn't blame their own military incompetence or their political failures, so they blamed the culture. They actually argued that Port of Shadows had sapped French morale.
Sap their will to fight.
Exactly. The source even mentions this report that General de Gaulle himself, the leader of the resistance, said this film was more deadly to France than 10 divisions of German soldiers.
That is a staggering claim, that a movie about a sad guy in a foggy town could undo an entire military.
It just shows you the power of cinema, right?
Mm.
They genuinely believed that by showing a world where escape is impossible, the film taught the French people to give up before the fight even started. They literally called it an aesthetic of defeat.
But the experts in our source, they push back on that, don't they?
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
They argue the opposite, that great art doesn't create a mood, it reflects what's already there. The film didn't create the defeatism, it just held up a mirror to the anxiety everyone was already feeling. It encoded the truth that the politicians were desperately trying to ignore.
So Port of Shadows is the mood piece. It establishes the world. But then a year later, 1939, literally on the eve of the war, Carné and Prévert release Le Jour se lève, which translates to Daybreak. And the source material calls this one a work of structural genius. So why the focus on structure here?
Because the structure is the whole point. This is one of the coolest things about Carné's work. Film historians call the structure of this film a temporal tragedy.
A temporal tragedy. Okay, break that down.
The film starts at the end. The very first thing you see is a gunshot. A man falls down a flight of stairs, dead. And then we see Jean Gabin again, playing a worker named Francois, and he's barricaded himself in his top-floor apartment, holding the smoking gun.
So you know who did it, and you know how it ends in the first minute.
The movie gives you the spoiler right up front. You know he's a murderer, and you know the police are surrounding the building. The whole rest of the movie is just him waiting in that room for the police to storm in at dawn.
And while he waits?
While he waits, he smokes cigarettes, and we get the whole story told in flashbacks.
How does that change the experience for the viewer? Because normally we watch to find out what happens.
Well, here you already know what happens, so you're forced to focus on why. But even more importantly, it completely changes the emotional weight of everything you see. Every happy moment in the flashbacks. Every time he laughs. Every time he kisses the girl he loves. You, the viewer, experience it as a loss. You are actively grieving the happiness while you are watching it happen because you know it all leads back to him alone in that room with a gun.
That is just devastating. It's like it weaponizes nostalgia against you. You can't even enjoy the good times.
You can't. The clock is already ticking. It is so effective. And visually, they just double down on this idea of the trap. The set, designed by Tronner again, is this 6-story working-class tenement building. The architecture itself enacts his fate.
How so? Is it just about him being high up?
It's about the distance. Gabin's at the very top. As the police close in, he retreats higher and higher, which means he's getting physically further and further away from the street. Escape from life.
Right.
There's this incredible shot where he looks out his window and he sees ordinary life just happening down below. People walking, vendors selling things. The building creates this physical abyss between him and a normal life. He can see it, but he can never, ever reach it.
That's such a brilliant metaphor for depression. Or isolation. Just seeing the world going on without you.
Perfect.
Now, here's a piece of trivia from the source that I had no idea about. Hollywood tried to remake this film.
They did. In 1947, it was remade as The Long Night with Henry Fonda. And this part is just wild. The American producers, RKO, they tried to buy up every single print of the French original and destroy them.
Get out of here. They wanted to delete the original from existence just to avoid bad reviews?
To prevent any comparison, yes.
Yeah.
But it's also because they fundamentally misunderstood what made the movie work. The remake completely failed, and the reason it failed is so telling. It's because poetic realism is, in a way, untranslatable.
Why? I mean, we remake foreign films all the time.
Because that specific brand of fatalism was so tied to pre-war French culture. Hollywood, at its core, demands a moral universe where there's at least the possibility of agency, where good guys can win. You can't just take that specific French doom, stick Henry Fonda in it, and expect it to work.
They changed the ending, didn't they?
Of course they did. In a Hollywood version, he doesn't die. He surrenders. There's hope.
And that just, it ruins the whole point.
It breaks the poetry. If there's hope, it's not poetic realism. The whole beauty of it comes from the inevitability of the loss.
So we move from this pre-war dread into the actual war. 1940. The Nazis occupy France. This is a massive turning point. Now, I would have assumed the film industry just shut down. But the notes say production actually increased.
It's completely counterintuitive, isn't it? You think the tanks roll in, the art stops, but no. The Nazis understood soft power. They wanted to keep the French population distracted.
Pacified.
Bread and circuses. Exactly. If people are sitting in a dark cinema, they're not out in the streets causing trouble. So they actually encouraged film production, as long as it wasn't, degenerate or explicitly anti-German.
So for a filmmaker like Carné, this must have been an absolute ethical minefield.
The ultimate dilemma. You basically had four choices. You could collaborate and make straight-up propaganda. You could join the resistance and fight. You could go into exile, which is what a lot of artists like Jean Renoir did.
Or the fourth option.
Or you could try to navigate the gray area, keep the industry alive, give your friends jobs, but try not to sell your soul in the process.
And Carné stayed.
He stayed. Now, to be clear, Carné wasn't Jewish, so he wasn't under the same immediate death threat that some of his collaborators were. His partner, Prévert, was very far to the left politically.
So they were walking a tightrope. How do they keep making movies without just, helping the Nazis?
Their strategy was code. They realized they couldn't make films about contemporary reality anymore. No more dock workers in Le Havre. The reality was too ugly, and if you filmed it honestly, it would just get censored.
So they retreated into the past.
Into history, into fantasy. They started making these big, lavish films set in other time periods, but they were allegories.
And the prime example of this is Les Visiteurs du Soir, which is The Night Visitors from 1942.
Right. It's a medieval fantasy. The plot is about the devil sending two of his emissaries to a castle to corrupt a pair of innocent lovers.
Okay, on the surface, that sounds about as far away from World War II as you can get.
And that's why the censors let it pass. It just looked like a harmless, beautiful fairy tale. But the French audiences, they decoded it instantly.
Okay, so break down the code for us. How does it work?
It's pretty straightforward once you see it. The devil is Hitler or Nazi Germany.
Right.
The castle, the lovers, that's France. And the ending is the key. The devil gets so frustrated that he can't break their love that he turns them both to stone. They become statues in the garden.
So evil wins.
It seems like it. The devil is standing there gloating. But then he hears a sound. A faint, rhythmic thumping.
Don't tell me. It's their hearts.
Their hearts are still beating inside the stone.
Oh, wow. That gives me chills just hearing it.
The message was so clear to the audience at the time. You can occupy our land. You can turn us to stone. You can silence us. But the heart of France is still beating. The spirit of our culture is unkillable.
And the Nazis just let this go.
It was subtle enough. The censors were looking for, people hiding guns or explicit calls to resistance. They weren't looking for metaphorical resistance. But for the people in that audience, sitting together in the dark, it was a shared secret, a massive act of defiance. And the film was a huge hit.
Which brings us to the big one, the magnum opus. The film that people consistently call the greatest French film ever made, Children of Paradise.
Les Enfants du Paradis. It is an absolute miracle that this film even exists.
So why a miracle? Just because of the scale of it?
The scale, the timing, all of it. It was filmed during the occupation, starting in 1943, which was one of the darkest periods. The logistics were a complete nightmare. You had shortages of everything, film stock, wood for sets. Electricity was rationed, so just lighting a scene was nearly impossible. And you had constant Nazi surveillance.
And yet they decided to make not just a movie, but the biggest, most expensive, most complex film in French history up to that point.
It's an act of defiance in itself. And the source material highlights something truly heroic about the crew.
What's that?
This is where that gray area becomes active resistance. We mentioned the set designer, Alexander Trauner, before.
Right, the guy who did Port of Shadows?
Well, Trauner was Jewish.
Yeah.
Under Nazi law, he was banned from working. He was living in hiding. So Carné hid him in the mountains near Nice, where they were shooting. And Trauner designed these enormous, elaborate sets in secret from a tiny hidden room, and couriers would run the blueprints back and forth to the studio.
So they're making this epic film about love and theater, and at the same time, they are literally running a resistance operation on set.
And not just him. The composer Joseph Cosmo was also Jewish and working in secret. They even used the massive sets to hide resistance fighters who were on the run from the Gestapo.
That's unbelievable. And speaking of those sets, they went big.
They went massive. They decided to recreate the entire Boulevard of Crime, which was the theater district of Paris in the 1830s. Trauner designed and they built a full-scale street from scratch in Nice. Hundreds of extras, horse-drawn carriages, multiple theaters. It's one of the most breathtaking sets in cinema history, built at a time when you could barely find nails. It was an act of pure will.
And the film itself is this 3-hour epic. At the center of it all is a woman named Garance.
Played by the legendary actress Arletty. And Garance, in the film, she represents absolute freedom. She's a woman who simply cannot be possessed or owned. She drifts through this world, and she's loved by 4 different men.
And each man represents a different kind of love, right?
A different way of loving, exactly. They're like archetypes. So first you have Baptiste, the mime, the great Jean-Louis Barrault.
Okay, what's his deal?
He loves her as an ideal, a pure spirit. He puts her on a pedestal. But because he can only see her as this perfect, untouchable thing, he can't really have a real relationship with her. He's the tragic, silent lover.
And then there's the actor.
Frédéric Lemaitre. He's swaggering, he's charming, he's brilliant. He loves her, for sure, but he also loves himself.
Yeah.
He loves the applause.
A narcissist. Okay, who's next?
Then you have Lacenaire, the criminal. He is fascinating. He calls himself an artist of crime. He's cold. He's theoretical. For him, love is a kind of intellectual game. And finally, you have the Count, the aristocrat.
And he just wants to own her.
He wants to possess her. Like a painting he can hang on his wall or a prized horse, he thinks his money can buy her freedom.
And Garance, she chooses. None of them, or all of them.
She flows between them. The whole point is the impossibility of pinning her down. Just like the spirit of France couldn't be fully pinned down by the occupation.
So when people watch this film, what is the core theme? Why does it resonate so deeply?
On one level, it's about theater versus life. All the characters are performing, even the criminal. And it asks this question: does art make life better, or does it just become a substitute for living? It's also incredibly generous. It treats every character, even the villain, with real complexity.
But the biggest takeaway is the act of making it.
That's the thing. By creating this massive, beautiful, unapologetically French monument to their own language and culture right under the noses of the occupiers, they were shouting, "We are still here. You haven't erased us." It was the ultimate act of cultural resistance.
Okay, so the war ends. France is liberated. Children of Paradise is finally released, and it's hailed as a masterpiece. You'd think Carné and Prévert would be on top of the world, but they break up.
They do. Their partnership ended very soon after the war. And this is where we get to the sad part of the story, the decline. Carné kept directing films for decades.
And they were not good.
They were technically brilliant, the camera work was still amazing, the compositions were perfect, but they lacked a soul.
They were missing the poetry.
They were missing Prévert. It's really the ultimate argument against the pure auteur theory, you know?
Yeah.
The idea that the director is the sole author of a film. In this case, the genius wasn't just Carné and it wasn't just Prévert. It was the third entity created by the friction between the cabinet maker and the poet.
And then, to add insult to injury, a whole new generation of filmmakers comes along and starts, well, bashing them.
The French New Ways, Godard, Truffaut, the cool kids of the late 50s and 60s, they launched this all-out attack on what they called le cinéma de papa.
Daddy's cinema. Ouch! That is a brutal label.
It was a very strategic attack. They saw Carné's style as old-fashioned. It was studio-bound. It was too literary, too perfect. They wanted to grab handheld cameras and run out into the streets. They wanted messiness and improvisation. Carné was the symbol of everything they were rebelling against.
But secretly, they must have admired him, right?
Oh, of course they did. Truffaut later admitted it. You can't be a French filmmaker and not secretly admire Children of Paradise. It's impossible. But, in order to start their own revolution, they felt like they had to kill the father.
So let's bring it to today. Why does any of this matter now? Why should someone listening go back and watch a black and white French film from 1938?
Because the mood, that central mood, feels incredibly contemporary. We use the phrase gathering historical catastrophe. Does that feel at all familiar?
Yeah, a little too familiar.
That sense of living in a precarious world, the anxiety about what's coming next, the feeling that we're all sort of sleepwalking towards something bad. Carné's films, they capture that dread perfectly, but they also show us how to find a kind of beauty and dignity within it. They validate the sadness. They tell you it's okay to feel disenchanted.
And you can see the influence everywhere, can't you? I mean, film noir is the obvious one.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
The trench coats, the long shadows, the cynical hero, the fatalism. Hollywood noir basically stole its entire playbook from French poetic realism. But you can see it in modern directors, too. Someone like Wong Kar-wai.
In the mood for love.
Yes. That feeling of missed connections, of smoke curling in a dark room, of a beautiful, lingering sadness, that is pure Carné.
Okay, so if someone listening wants to dive in, they've never seen a Carné film, where do they start?
The source has a very specific recommendation, and it's not the 3-hour epic.
Yeah.
No, do not start with Children of Paradise. That's the advanced course.
Yeah.
You'll get there. They recommend starting with Le Jour se lève. with Daybreak.
And why that one specifically?
Because it's so tight. It's 93 minutes. It grabs you by the throat with that opening gunshot, and it never lets go. It is absolutely devastating, but it's also completely accessible.
Yeah.
It's the perfect distillation of the entire style.
And the source also provides some strict rules for watching it.
Yes, there are rules. You cannot watch this on your phone while you're on the subway.
No.
You need a dark room.
Yeah.
You need to watch it in a single sitting. No checking your email, no second screen. It demands your concentrated attention. You have to let that fog wrap itself around you.
I love that. Treat the film like an experience, not just as content.
That's it.
So, to recap this whole journey then, we went from the fog of Le Havre and the dignified exhaustion of Jean Gabin
Through the structural genius of the flashbacks in Le Jour se lève.
into the darkness of the occupation where films became secret codes.
And finally, to the sound of hearts still beating inside stone statues. It's a journey from anxiety to resistance and then to legacy.
It really is. And here is a final provocative thought to leave you all with. The source material mentioned that during the occupation, the cinema was a space of relative darkness and privacy.
A sanctuary.
A sanctuary.
Yeah.
It was one of the only places people could go to be alone with their emotions, even when they were surrounded by a crowd. So my question is, in our era, where we are constantly under surveillance, constantly illuminated by the bright screens in our hands, where we are never really in the dark, is the movie theater, or even just the act of turning off all the lights in your living room to watch a film like this, is that one of the last true private spaces we have left? A place to be truly alone with our feelings.
That is a beautiful thought. That the dark isn't just for hiding, it's for feeling.
Something to mull over. Go watch Le Jour se lève. Turn off your phone.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive.